Hi there, my name is Steve Gerhardt, and this is the Unagi Observer. Thank you so much for stopping by and watching this week. This week I want to talk a little bit about what can we replace Isekai anime with. And you're like, what? Replacing Isekai? Yeah, so at Otakon, several different panels of different studios and different Japanese authors, manga authors, anime directors, people who are making the stories, authors and such, have pretty much all kind of said the same thing, which is, you know, the market is saturated with Isekai. Every season we have like at least half of them are some type of Isekai. And we're starting to stretch for like what kind of what new thing can we do to make the Isekai interesting? And it's getting really hard. And just to give you an idea, last week on the Weekly Dig, which is on the Anime Archaeology YouTube channel, which is every Sunday night at 8 p.m. So please come and join us, where we talk about anime. One of the things we talked about was that there's a new anime coming out. The title escapes me, but the premise is that the protagonist is reincarnated, of course, because that's one of the ways that you Isekai, you have to die, and he reincarnates as a vending machine. And he has limited communication, and he communicates with a female adventurer who straps him to her back, and they go on dungeon adventures. So that's the Isekai. So I'm buying into it because it's absurd, and I enjoy absurd things. But you get the idea. We're kind of pushing the envelope here for things that are going to be interesting and new and gather an audience. So, like the guy said at Otakon, you know, maybe another 3 to 5 years of this level of Isekai being thrown at us before it drops off. And if you recall, that's what happened to Mecha. First it was Mecha, and then suddenly it drops off, and now we only have like maybe 2 or 3 titles, if that, per season that is Mecha related. So it looks like Isekai is in that way. Not quite there yet, another 3 to 5 years, but you know, what do we do when the Isekai drops off? What would we like to see? What would we like to experience? What kind of different things out there? It doesn't necessarily have to be new, but it can be different. You know, something interesting. So I'm going to develop this little series for this channel, the Unagi Observer, and kind of periodically come back to this subject with different kinds of genres and ideas. So we're going to start off with adapting science fiction novels and books as anime. So let's get started. So the first science fiction novel, actually it's a trilogy of novels that I would like to see adapted into anime, is the Machineries of Empire trilogy by Yoon-Ha Lee. Yoon-Ha Lee is trans. They started in 2016, wrote a book every year, 2016, 2017, 2018, to finish out the trilogy, and it's this kind of space opera kind of deal going on. And this is perfect for a long-form kind of anime, science fiction anime. It's set in of course, a future universe where basically Chinese culture, it's very, very steeped in Chinese culture. The calendar is actually what drives technology. This is kind of a weird concept to wrap your head around, but basically they create calendars for their technology to run off of. So it's kind of like this weird spiritual, technological, biological thing that happens that is all integrated within this one big Chinese empire in space, basically. And it is a very stratified empire, just like the original Chinese empires were. So you have classes of people that work their way up, and you have a ruling class of 7 different groups, each that have different kinds of functions. And they're kind of, you know, they're unified in ruling their empire, but they're always kind of like going, maybe I want to be in control. No, maybe I want to be in control. And then, of course, all of them are searching for the secret of immortality. So in comes this low-level captain in the army called the Kell, Sheris, and she is she's fine. She's, you know, a normal soldier, and she is tasked to allow them to insert the ghost or the thoughts of Jideo, Shuo Jideo. I know I'm mispronouncing his name, who was a outstanding general from 500 years prior, who won every single battle that he ever fought, and in the last battle after he won it, he killed his entire command. Nobody knows why. So they executed him, but kept his sentience. And from time to time, they would put that sentience into a person to bring him back so that he can lead an army against a threat. So the trilogy starts off with a threat, and they bring this Kel captain in, and she is imbued with the sentience of Shuo Jideo. And they both think at the same time, so it's not like one takes control over the other without the other's permission. So it's kind of this kind of weird dichotomy. So another thing that you're going to have to work with in this series is that everyone is that sexuality and gender really don't mean anything. So if you are a individual who happens to be trans, you're going to really enjoy this. These books, these stories, because that's just how this empire operates. But like I said, this can be like a long form running anime, where the protagonist is Sheris, and she's having to deal with this kind of evil concept that's lurking in the side of her head and just waiting to take over, and no one's sure if that sentience is sane or not. And so just working with each other, trying to solve the initial problem. The trilogy goes on with Shuo Jideo, revealing what his plans are and seeing whether or not Sheris will actually work with him to achieve his ultimate goal that he started 450, 500 years prior. So again, I think this would be a really good long form. I mean, we're talking like probably 2 or 3 seasons worth of episodes here. And I think that would be, and the equipment that is described within these 3 books is rich. I mean, this great detail. I would love to see mecha designs based on the descriptions within the books. This is going to be definitely kind of like, if you like Macross, then you might want to have something like this on your plate to watch as an anime. Okay, so the next one on my list is a classic. It's kind of an interesting story unto itself on how it was created, and it's going to be the first of 2 Arthur C. Clarke works that I would like to see adapted as an anime. And this is, you all know it and love it. You've seen the movie probably. You know the theme song, 2001: Space Odyssey. Now, the interesting thing about this book is that the book was being written at the same time that the movie script was also being written and being filmed. And Stanley Kubrick and Arthur C. Clarke are actually both the authors of 2001: Space Odyssey, but Arthur C. Clarke would actually ultimately get the credit for that, while Kubrick gets the credit for 2001. So we're all familiar with the movie. The book is very closely in line with the movie in terms of broad concepts and ideas. And but when you read the book and you compare it to the movie, the book has some more richer details. Like, for example, the whole sequence of man as ape, learning how to use tools, and then the first Sentinel monolith shows up and teaches them how to be more smart, I guess is the way to put it. And we get the famous intro music that everybody knows and loves. That is an entire segment of the novel, like the first third, and it's a very rich story. And actually, some of the ape men are actually named. Clarke names them, not that they know that their own names, but that's what he calls them. And there's a whole story, and there's a whole backstory to all of this that is just amazing and should be told. Also, there's a difference in terms of the second third of the book, which is basically the actual Jupiter mission, where Hal is on the ship, and they're going towards Jupiter. And initially, the mission was supposed to be something else. It should be noted Arthur C. Clarke is what's considered hard science fiction. In other words, he tries to base his science fiction on real science as much as he possibly can. Obviously, there's going to have to be some license and suspension of disbelief here and there, but he really tries hard to say, hey, this is how things work and this is how I think it's going to work. It's kind of like Gundam in that way, where Gundam, it has its own physics, but it stays within the laws of its own physics. This does the same thing. The movie was a compelling story. I cannot imagine an anime of this where we can take longer time to explore some of these other stories. Can't be good as an anime. I mean, I think that would be a fun thing to watch, particularly with the second third of them actually getting out there. And it's the last third that Hal loses his computer mind and, chaos ensues. I don't want to spoil it for those of you who haven't seen it, but I think that this classic of an anime, this classic hard science fiction anime, should be or movie should be an anime. So yeah, can you tell I'm a little excited about that? Excited about something that's probably never going to happen, but I wish it would. Alright, next up is the other Arthur C. Clarke story that I would like to see adapted into anime. It's called Songs of Distant Earth. It was originally written in 1958 as a short story, Songs of Distant Earth, and then he would later on kind of expand it into a novel of the same name. And in between those two periods in time, he actually wrote it as kind of a treaty to see if it could be made into a movie, because after 2001 was released and became a really big hit, the studios came back to him and said, hey, do you got something else, because this is pretty good, this is pretty awesome. And he wrote this, and it of course never really got anywhere. And then later on in 1986 he came back to that script, kind of that short script, and said, based on the short story, let me expand on these two things and make a novel out of it. It is reputed to be that is his favorite novel that he has written. Don't know about the veracity of that, but it would make sense because I've probably read it so many times that I've actually worn out copies. I think I'm on my 4th copy of the paperback. So it's a really good read. So what is it about? Why do I think this would be a good thing? Well, this would be definitely a story with a beginning, middle, and end. So we're talking kind of like probably 2 seasons, 26 episodes, right? And basically what it is that this is not a spoiler. Earth is basically doomed and it gets blown up. Prior to that happening, mankind figures that out and has basically 4,000 years to get mankind off planet and reach out to the stars to survive, right? And so then in the last 100 years they discover, and the way that they do it, there's no faster than light travel, so they do a lot of seed ships with genetic material and DNA and things like that. It's only in the last 100 years before the sun goes nova and destroys the solar system that they discover that they actually can do a percentage of the speed of light. And not only that, but they can actually put people into hibernation and have it work and not have people die. So, the premise is that the last ship, called the Magellan, leaves Earth as the sun goes nova. They were able to watch the destruction of the solar system. Again, this is not a spoiler. And they all go into hibernation, and they're going through space. Now, again, I point out that Arthur C. Clarke is a hard science kind of guy, and when he writes fiction, so he's trying to use the physics of the time as he understands it. And one of the things that a lot of people don't understand about outer space, is that it's not empty. There are a lot of tiny things out there, and if you're going faster than the speed of light, not faster than the speed of light, but a certain percentage of the speed of light, a little tiny pebble could probably destroy your entire ship, right? So they want to create a shield that's eventually going to get worn down, and what they did is they made up this humongous shield of ice in front of the ship, kind of like as a bore almost to go drive through space. So obviously after a while it's going to wear down and you're going to need to replenish. Well, by this point there are various planets that they know have been colonized. Some of them are stayed in communication, some have not. So they're going to a planet called Thalassia, which has not been in communication, but they know what type of planet it is, which is basically they have like a few islands, think like Hawaii times 2, and that's all there is in terms of land mass on this planet. The rest of it's ocean. So the Magellan comes to this planet, which is one of the first planets to be colonized, right? So, here you have two totally different cultures meeting with each other, and then you start asking the questions of, like, how much information do you give the Thalassians? They live in this utopian society where really nothing bad happens. And do you want to introduce things like, oh, well, you all are nice people, but here's a Shakespeare story about war. Do you introduce Shakespeare to them? Is that something you want to do? It might change their society for the worse or for the better, who knows? And then you get the idea of, hey, here we are with this wonderful utopian planet, basically Hawaii in space, and why are we going to a planet that we're going to have to terraform and we're going to have to live in like this ship for the rest of our lives when we can be living on the beach here? And so then you have to deal with those kinds of issues. So I think this would be a very interesting story to adapt as an anime. Like I said, this is a book that I've read over and over and over again. It's a wonderful story, and it's very thought-provoking. So who knows? This might be a good anime. What do you think? Now, for this next entry, we're going to go away from hard science fiction, classic science fiction, and we're going to go into cyberpunk, which is one of my favorite genres to read, period, end of story. And this one is a book called Thin Air by Richard K. Morgan, and it's the sequel to 13, or if you're in Britain, that would be Black Man. For some reason, two different titles between America and Britain. So what is Thin Air, and why does the name Richard K. Morgan sound familiar? Morgan wrote Altered Carbon, so he's responsible for that. So we know he's an established cyberpunk writer. This is a good series. Thin Air is another one that is probably like good for a season, maybe two. Maybe you can expand on it depending on the popularity of it. The idea of it, of course, is cyberpunk. The main character is a genetically altered person who is a hibernoid. Basically, what he does is that he hibernates for about 4 to 5 months, and then when he comes out, he's in go mode all the time. Like he doesn't really sleep. He's like sleeps 2 hours here, 3 hours there, maybe whatever, and then he says go 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 go. And he used to be a corporate, what's called Black Hatch Man, which means that he would be put out into space. The reason why he's a hibernoid is that he would be put out into space, put under, and wait to be activated, and to rescue a ship that might be being hijacked or something in space. He currently lives on Mars. He kind of plays like the main character of Altered Carbon, which is, a guy who has a very checkered past. He's done some very questionable things. He's kind of a fixer, if you know what I mean. Kind of like a private investigator who is not afraid to, kill people, basically. And it's basically this drama of him getting entangled in a larger conspiracy to control Mars. And Mars is, at this point, it's only sparsely colonized. Like, there's not a whole lot to Mars that's been colonized, but it's a few hundred years into the future. And basically, he's trying to earn enough money to get back home to Earth, which, if you're on Mars, apparently you get stuck there and it's really hard to get back. And sometimes they have a lottery that can get you on a ship that's going back, and you kind of become a celebrity and you win money. And the guy who won the lottery winds up dead. There's an audit from Earth that comes in. They bring in these people from Earth, and there's an audit. He's tasked to bodyguard one of the auditors. She goes missing, and so that's where the mystery starts and all the chaos ensues. This is cyberpunk. This is current day cyberpunk at its best. Richard K. Morgan is really good at this. There are a lot of things here. There's a lot of character designs that I can see that will just be beautiful in anime form. Like, for example, a lot of people, like, there's a lot of, like, if you're thinking of Blade Runner, with all those different holograms and things, shouting at you, it's kind of like that. That's what's described in the book. And also people have, augments. Sometimes they're obvious. Somebody has like a metal hand, whatever. He has what's called an Osiris, which is a thing that goes over his face that connects to him neurally. It connects to his brain, which enhances his abilities. So I would just think that these character designs would be awesome. And also, it's interesting in terms of like what kind of people that they use. Like, for example, the lower classes in Mars, the working class, the labor class, the classes getting abused the most, are Peruvian. So you got a lot of Peruvian things that are references and things like that. He himself is not Peruvian. He's I forget exactly what he is, but I think he's like half American, half Japanese, or something like that. And so it's just this kind of interesting culture that happens. This would be, I think, in terms of non-stop action. Think Cowboy Bebop, punch him up, bang bang, shoot him up. That's this kind of anime, and I think it would be exciting to see. So yeah, Richard K. Morgan's Thin Air. If you haven't read it, please do. It's a good read. So I could go on and on and on about science fiction novels and short stories or whatever that could be adapted into anime, but I only have so much time. So I'm going to end it with a classic Cyberpunk. Cyberpunk was started in the 70s, didn't really get any steam until the 80s, and one of the big authors of Cyberpunk from the 80s is George Alec Evinger, and he wrote this great series of book called the Madrid Dran series. That's the main character, and it starts with Gravity Fails. Gravity Fails takes place in an Earth that's about 200 years in the future from now, and it is a world where there are no superpowers. Everyone's balkanized, meaning that they've descended into smaller countries, nation states, city states, whatever. So there's no real superpowers left. There's no Chinese superpower, there's no Russian, there's no American. And one of the key things about this new world is information and being able to keep up with information, of which, for some reason, in the Middle East, people in the Middle East seem to excel at this. So this is where the story takes place. It doesn't tell you exactly what city you're in. It's basically a major metropolitan area, something like Cairo. So I'm kind of want to say that it actually takes place in Cairo in the future. The main character, Madrid Odran, is a fixer. He's that guy. You pay him to help you do things. It can be something as simple as negotiating a job offer to finding your lost daughter, whatever it is. Now, he is, at the start of this story, he is unaugmented, meaning that he isn't modified. Now, this is a kind of different cyberpunk world in that we don't really have big like android. There's no androids. There's no like people with metal arms with saws or guns as part of their arms or whatever. It's not that. It's far more literally cerebral. So people who are augmented or modied, as the term is put, basically have their brains wired, literally wired. And you can pop in what are called mommies and daddies. So like if you wanted to change your personality, you could have a disc that changed your personality and you plug it in. If you wanted to, say, give yourself temporarily a skill, like maybe accounting or being able to speak a language, it's something you put in the back of your head. And within your own brain, there can be things that they can rewire to help you be better. Like maybe, be able to tap into your adrenal gland and say, I need strength now, and be able to do that, or block out pain, or, things of that nature. So that's really what we're talking about when we're talking about augmentation. And there's no like jacking into computers or anything like that. This is the level of cyberpunk that we're at. And Madrid Odran is tasked by the big baddie, Friedlander Bay, who turns out to be his patron after a while. That's not a spoiler. and he is asked to do his bidding in a certain case, if you will. And this leads to him finally getting augmented and having to navigate these things while also trying to solve these crimes that are happening. Basically, there's a serial killer loose, and he's killing, he or she is killing the friends of Friedlander Bay. So he taps Merida and says, "You're going to help me." And this is the kind of guy where nobody can say no to, right? That's kind of how powerful this guy is. So that's what he's dealing with. It is dirty. It is gritty. It is your gumshoe with a cyberpunk ethic to it. It is amazing, and I can only just imagine, given the rundown world of Cowboy Bebop, that's what I imagine this world to be. And just how, like, in Cowboy Bebop, everything is just kind of like there's no central government or things like that for this big expansive area. It's the world building is just amazing in this story. So this is the last story that I think you should consider as an adaptation to an anime. So Gravity Fails. If you happen to have a chance to check that one out as well, please do. See what original Cyberpunk is like, and I'm sure you would enjoy it. Okay, so that's my short list of science fiction novels, short stories, books that I think could be adapted into a really good anime. In preparation of when Isekai finally starts to wind down. What do you think? What is something that you have read that I haven't listed yet that you think might be a good anime adaptation? Put it down below. Just see what you think. All right. So that's going to be it for this week. The weekly dig is not going to be on this upcoming week, but it'll be on after that. Other than that, I guess that's it. So, love you guys, and I'll see you next time.